Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber, Senior Contributing Editor, and I will be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Instructure. It's titled Appy Hour, From Strategic to Tactical, Getting the Most Out of Classroom Technology. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to take a few moments to highlight a couple of items. First, today's event will be recorded. In a couple of days, you'll receive an email containing a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation. And second, please do ask questions, and don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. I'm hoping that we'll have probably maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We do have a chat function on the console which can be launched via the brown group chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool News team with any technical issues or concerns you may have. But please don't use the chat function to ask the panelists questions. They probably won't have time to monitor the chat. If you have questions, please use the Q&A panel instead. With that out of the way, I want to welcome our three speakers, all of whom work and teach at Archbishop Edward McCarthy High School in Fort Lauderdale. Melissa Christweiser is a tech mentor and math teacher at the school. She has been a member of the Archbishop McCarthy community for 11 years and received her master's degree in Decision and Information Sciences from the University of Florida. Monica Arango has 17 years of teaching experience, with 10 of those years as part of the Archbishop McCarthy community, where she teaches AP Environmental Science and Honors Biology, and also serves as a tech mentor. Monica is responsible for the implementation of technology throughout the school. Our third speaker, Irene Rodriguez, is a veteran English teacher from both the public and private sector. Irene is currently responsible for technology integration and implementation throughout Archbishop McCarthy High School. Without further ado, let me turn it over to Melissa, Monica, and Irene. Welcome to all three of you. It's an honor to have you here. Monica, I think maybe you were going to lead off.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to start with thanking you for joining us today. And I wanted to show you just a visual of our school. This is an aerial view taken by one of our teachers that is in charge of pretty much everything to do with commercializing the school. Archbishop McCarthy has been open for over 12 years, and about 4 years ago we implemented a one-to-one iPad program. We started the rollout with freshmen, and well, mandatory for freshmen, and then it was optional for the upperclassmen. By the third year, we had basically full implementation of a one-to-one iPad program. That is a visual of our latest wing. It's called their 21st Century Classroom, and we actually have virtual style learning taking place in that classroom for all juniors and seniors. We're currently in our 5th year. We were awarded Apple Distinguished School our 2nd year in the program, and we've held the title for 2 years now. We want to give you kind of an overview of our transition using the iPad in the classroom, and really more so the need to change the way we taught, because the students have so much opportunity at their hands with the iPad that we realized early on that their learning style is completely different from what we were used to 5 years prior teaching. I've been teaching for 17 years, as he mentioned, and I've always tried to be innovative in the classroom, but I knew with the iPad immediately on that I had to change a lot of the ways I taught because of the easy access to information the students now had. We allow our students to browse the internet pretty much with filters and restrictions, but they do have the opportunity to search and learn independently. So one of the first transitions I made was I thought of ways that I used to teach the lesson prior and how I could continue to teach the lesson the same way. And one of the first things I used with the kids was an app called Quizlet. It's actually a web tool as well. And I thought of this when it was the unit. I try to create my students into independent learners, and this particular unit involved them creating flashcards. So I said to myself, how can my students create a flashcard using the iPad? And I discovered that Quizlet is not just a flashcard maker. It actually allows kids to generate their own sets, search for sets that are already made, edit them, and pretty much make them their own. So this example that I'm showing you here is a feature that Quizlet has, which is called Combine. And what my students did here was take their notes. They actually, each group generated their own content from the notes, and then they used the Combine feature and they combined sets. So I had each part of the class creating a set, and they combined it to create a midterm bio review. That basically kicked into gear any student that found that this was their tool for studying. They implemented the use of this app throughout the school year. Here's a sample of my students actually using the Quizlet created to self-assess. It allows you to create multiple choice tests, fill in the blank, sorting, spelling. I mean, it could be used from elementary to high school. And as I mentioned prior, there's sets already created for you. So I challenge you to take any book you currently have and search for a set, and you're going to see how these sets are already created that you can copy and implement into your own classroom. Another thing is that Quizlet actually incorporates math tools in their generated sets, or you can incorporate them yourself using a generator, and they use visuals as well. My second transition, and here I want to talk a little bit about my before and after, I realized questions that I used to ask my students, just basic questions that I felt like are obviously important content in the class. My students now have the opportunity to search the internet and possibly copy and paste the answers from what they found, even if it was from the text. So I started to think, how can I ask this same question that I've asked before that is the most important question for this unit, but get a different type of response? So I started to use this app called Pic Collage. I'm a science teacher, so visuals are everything. And this is the type of responses I was getting from my students. This is an example of a question that I gave my students to compare amphibians and reptiles, their general characteristics, their reproductive cycles, examples of them, and where they live. And as you see, my students looked for answers. They interpreted the answers into visuals that made sense for them. And if you look here, like cold-blooded, they would use a syringe and an icicle. I am convinced that my students captured this information better than they had before, because not only were they answering the questions, they were interpreting them in their own style, and they also, individualized it for their needs for future study. This is another example of a Pic Collage. It's for a social studies class. It was actually done by a young, I believe, 5-year-old. We just wanted to practice to see what age group is comfortable, and this technology is something all our kids are comfortable with. So they actually put together facts that they knew based on little pieces that they knew or searched, and were able to construct a Pic Collage just from that.
All right, Inspiration Maps is a great tool, again, for all subject areas. I'm an English teacher, so what I use this for is for the essay planning. When they're going to go in and do any kind of brainstorming, they can look at what's there. Here, this one's done in a science classroom, holding out that. And what's great about this is whenever they create it, if they're the visual learner and they see it with the bubbles, they can then just touch at the top left corner. You'll see something that looks like bubbles and next to it lines. And when they touch that top part, it automatically switches to a beautiful outline. So in the English class, when you're asking them to research, do research papers and essays and create an outline, this lets them work both ways, either from the outline to the visual or from the visual to the outline. It also has the other subject areas, and it even has one where it lets them build a group project, so you can let them get into their groups, and then they have to actually designate and break down whatever it is they're going to do. There we go. This is going to show you the different types of already generated graphic organizers that it has. This is for, great for all school levels, middle, high school, subjects, science. It's going a little quick on there. Thinking skills, as you can see, and there's that group project plan that I had mentioned. Subtext was probably my first aha moment as a teacher and a reading teacher in the classroom. And what it did was it allowed my students to kind of read collectively. If you're familiar with marginal note-taking and study guides, what subtext allowed us to do was bring all of that together for the students. So when you look on the sides there, you see a little picture of me. The students would tap on that and it would ask a question. Well, I'm trying to get a class dialogue going, and student at a time, what are you scared of? What terrifies you? And I'm getting one-word answers. I'm not able to, teach them this whole terror and get them into this discussion. And once they started doing it this way, my class exploded with conversation. What I had them do was answer it first. So they typed in all these wonderful responses, 3 to 4 sentences long. And once they did that, they couldn't see each other's answers until they responded, so it gave control for the content they were delivering and not copying each other's answers. And what I did is I said, you have to like it and respond back to the other person. Whoever gets the most likes, they're going to get candy. These were high school kids that were, trying to see who had the scariest, and they're reading and reading and reading and liking each other, and then all of a sudden they start fighting, arguing with each other and calling out, well, that's not scary, mine's scarier, why did you like his? And now all of a sudden I had this whole eruption on what is actually terrifying and not terrifying in class. And that student who never talks, now they were talking. Those one-word answers became elaborate points that we were able to start really delving into, and it was a great conversation piece, and it started discussions well. Plus, they were able to log and monitor each other's answers to the discussion questions that I had also posted throughout the literature. This can open websites. And it'll open it like a book on a shelf. It can take PDFs. It can take downloaded EPUBs. It can take I haven't really found anything that I can't put in there. And through Google Stores, you can purchase novels that they can read and share together. So technically, you really have full collaborative learning happening in that class because they're all using kind of like that same book. So that was a great, great feature.
Hi there, I'm Melissa Chrisweiser. As Andrew mentioned, I teach math. So one of the things that really transformed my classroom was Notability. We use Notability for our paper and pencil and marker and highlighter and pen and scissors and notebooks. It's basically the one app that if you stop any of our students in the hallway, they would tell you they use the most. And it started basically substituting the material that we used to give. So if I were to give a worksheet, I could just convert it into a PDF. And something like this I was able to actually annotate on top of it, because one of the challenges we found with iPad when we first started was, stuff like the equation editor that our computers had, the iPad really lacked, or, it had turned into a picture and pull it out, and it wasn't really efficient. So I was able to type in things. So this document you're seeing is actually made in Notability. I was able to type stuff in and then hand draw what I needed to hand draw, and add in the images of a coordinate plane like you see. And then the students are able to basically answer the questions that normally would have just been a hard copy of a piece of paper. So the first thing that Notability allowed us to do was to become digital by way of transforming most of our notes into PDFs. A lot of us have taken our, note shells or PowerPoint presentations and convert them into PDFs, and then the students are able to pull them into Notability and annotate or highlight or insert pictures, add note pages. There's tons of tools that they can use to help do their notes a little bit more personalized for them. And then, like Monica mentioned, part of what we were realizing is that most of these students were able to share information a lot easier than they used to. You had to actually physically borrow somebody's notebook if you wanted to copy it before, but now they didn't even have to be in front of you to share information. So we started to do more student-generated work. So instead of giving them, I probably would have led into, this is a problem based on, trig function, sine, cosine, tangent. I would have introduced this section by giving examples on my end, but then if I really want to see assessment, an original assessment, that's fun for the students, I asked them to come up with their own trig word problem, which this can be done in any age. You can do this, in any word problem as little as, kindergarten all the way up. They could create their own type of word problem, and then I asked them to be a little artistic and give a visual, like you see there. And then they had to solve this problem. So underneath this, you would have seen her work out the example. So not only am I certain that these students are grasping the concept, but they're allowed to be creative and visual, which math is not always the best place to do that. One of the things we started to realize is that our students that we didn't realize were amazing artists were giving work like that, and we wondered how it was happening. Well, one of the great things about Notability is you can import a picture, like you're going to see done here, and then the students can actually trace over the picture, like they're doing now, and drag their drawn picture off of the original picture, and then delete the old picture, and it actually becomes their original work. So this is great for kids that are not that artistic or have a hard time but can duplicate. It certainly allows them to recreate, and yet they're learning whatever it is they're drawing. In this example, it was like, a cell cycle. So these kids are actually drawing the parts of a cell, and maybe they would have had a much harder time free drawing it, but they're able to trace it and move it off. Another great feature on Notability is the recording feature. So you can hit the mic, and you can record audio, or you can hit the audio button to record and also do annotations, and it will tie the audio to the annotation. So I've used it in math to have students work out problems, but in this example, you're going to see a student reading a sonnet that they wrote and highlighting the words as she goes.
Moon and stars smile brightly on me this night. Yet my love is nowhere to be found. Is he lost? A rose smitten with him, O night! I shall look for him. Hark! I'll climb that mound. Higher hurrying, heavenly bound I be. I will search for him all through the night. For my darling love is waiting for me, as he always answers when I call, O night! His smile is as bright as the stars. His heart is as pure as new snow. So why do I see him by the parked cars, kissing a girl whom I don't even know?
I'm going to replay that so you get the audio again.
Moon and stars smile brightly on me this night. Yet my love is nowhere to be found. Is he lost? A rose smitten with him, O night! I shall look for him. Hark! I'll climb that mound. Higher hurrying, heavenly bound I be. I will search for him all through the night. For my darling love is waiting for me, as he always answers when I call, O night! His smile is as bright as the stars. His heart is as pure as new snow. So why do I see him by the parked cars, kissing a girl whom I don't even know? He is scum of the earth. a piece of trash. But I love him so much. He is loaded with cash.
So you can see that that was obviously an actual original sonnet that one of the English students wrote. And I would imagine most of her images she probably traced the way that I just showed in that last video. You know, it's hard to tell who's a great artist now and who's not because they get their work to look so good. The next app we're going to show is called EduCreations. And EduCreations is a whiteboard recording app. So one of the great things about EduCreations is that you're able to set up a class and have your students enroll in the class. And then what I do daily is record my lessons and push them out to the class. What I love about EduCreations is that I don't have to worry about the storage on my iPad to save those individual videos, nor do I have to push them out. We use an LMS called Canvas, obviously, that we can push them out that way, but instead we just do a link. So what I would do is in each of my lessons, I would have the assignment for the students, and then within Canvas, directly under it, I would have the link to the EduCreations video. And one of the other great things about Canvas is that it allows you to play the EduCreations videos through Canvas. So if I'm having the students do work through EduCreations, I don't have to leave the app to see them. So I'm going to show you two examples. One is what I would have created. So this is kind of an idea behind like flipping the classroom. I can send this video home with my students. Or most days I record live with them and then I post the videos so that they can, rewatch if they need to get the material again, or if they were absent, the student can simply go to Canvas and see what was done that day and get the link to the assignment.
If OR is 6, so we're going to say this is 6, and OT is 8, then find RT. Well, what we know about where a tangent line hits the radius is this is a right angle, and now I've got a right triangle. If you go back to your a squared plus b squared equals c squared, you should remember there's a triple. That is 6, 8, and the missing side is 10.
So that was actually a screenshot of a slide I would have had in a PowerPoint that I just annotated on top of and recorded while I wrote. The next example is something I had the students do. So a lot of times when we show teachers these ideas, they worry about how much time it takes to build an assignment, or how much prep work it took on the teacher end, or how long it takes for the students to work. Are they working in class? Do they have to meet outside of class? That kind of thing. And sometimes there are these big elaborate projects that we ask our students to meet together, to work together outside of class. But sometimes they're simple projects that can be, or assignments that can be done in class. So for example, in this next example, I took my students to the media center so they had space to spread out and they weren't talking on top of each other. But a lot of times in our school you'll walk around and you'll see our students in the hallways recording all over the place. And I had them pair up in groups of 4s, and I gave them each a role in the graphing concepts. And I literally took 5 minutes at the beginning of class, I wrote down a bunch of different examples, and I handed them out. I cut up pieces of paper, I handed them out, I took them to the media center. So in one class time, I asked them to go through each of these examples, and they took turns doing the roles. So what you're going to hear is a change in voice and a change, you'll hear them shift the iPad to each member of the group so that they could show the work.
Equals 2, in the period equals 2 pi over 2. 2's cancel out and it just equals pi. To find the key points, you just multiply pi times 1/4, which equals pi over 4. Pi times 1/2 equals pi over 2. And pi times 3/4 equals 3 pi over 4. These are the key points as well as pi. Okay, so it's a graph. The first point is pi over 4. The next point is pi over 2. Then 3 pi over 4 and pi, and the amplitude is 2. start on the 0. And then there's the curve. Okay.
So Doceri actually works similar to Educreations. It has the ability to be an interactive whiteboard as well as a desktop remote access, which means you can use that app to hook on to your desktop or laptop and mirror what you have on display on your PC. It's a little bit more extensive in the fact that you have more tools, so it's a little bit more complex to use. Our first example is actually a math example using a similar function as Educreation, so I'm going to let Melissa talk about that one.
So this example, I had my students basically teach the unit circle tricks back to me. It's pretty straightforward. I'll let the video play. This is a student teaching how to learn how to do the unit circle.
Today we're going to learn about the unit circle. So this is 0. Now, this is the trick. Ready? It goes plus 30. So now you're going to have 30 right here. Then it's plus 15. Every single thing is going to be over 2. It's going to be 1, 2, 3.
This next example is actually a science example.
It starts with a neutron.
It starts with a neutron and a U-235. The neutron goes and hits the U-235, which makes it split into 2 daughter U-235s, and this creates massive amounts of heat energy and neutrons. These neutrons go and hit the daughter U-235s, splitting them even further and creating even more energy, more neutrons, and more U-235s. Thus, it just continues over and over and the cycle repeats.
So to kind of give you an explanation of that assignment, my students used to just draw a diagram showing any process in science, and science is all about process. So I was really happy when I realized that there's so many applications where my students can actually show you how the process flows, and Doceri allows you to do that. It has 2 separate tools where you can actually erase so it looks like something's being animated, or you can use this lasso tool and it actually moves objects, and then it allows you to record over after you've completed your whole diagram. So it lets the kids kind of collect their thoughts and then explain it to you, which basically, in the end, lets you know that they definitely know the material, which in itself is a reward.
This next project in my class, in the English class, we asked them to show imagery, to be able to visualize what they were reading. So we asked them to use words from the text and show what those visuals are.
See, the pit is being drawn. Edgar Allan Poe described it as a big, deep hole in the ground, that kind of hole into which you definitely don't want to fall. As now you can see, I'm drawing the pendulum, which Poe described it as, looking upward, I surveyed the ceiling of my prison. It was some 30 or 40 feet overhead, and constructed much as the side walls. In one of its panels, a very singular figure retrieved my whole attention.
Again, making all those quiet kids actually participate. As you could hear, she has quite an accent. This girl's a very quiet girl in the class, but here, using the technology, she was able to feel comfortable with her presentation, take her time in speaking, and was very proud of what she was able to bring to the classroom.
Yeah, it starts to kind of erupt into this explosion of creation from our students. They understand this technology so well, and they feel, in a sense, like they're kind of playing. Sometimes they don't even realize that they're learning. Like nuclear fission, in the past example, is such an extensive topic. And I could stop that girl. I could write her an email. She's alumni, and ask her, explain to me the process of nuclear fission. And it's programmed in her brain forever. The fact that these students are taking the lessons and generating their own version or interpretation of what the lesson is, because we're able to give them the tools to try to accomplish this, is great. And that kind of leads me to my next app, which is called Animation Creator. It used to be called Animation HD. And I could remember this moment in my classroom where I used to lecture or have a class discussion for 20 or 30 minutes, and with the iPad, all that has changed. But I remember this particular unit, which was, I believe, the cell cycle, and I was going to show a animation of a cycle. And I thought, okay, no, I'm not going to show you this animation. You guys are going to create one. And my students actually were like, well, how? And the beauty of it is I didn't really know, but I said the first person that could come up with an app that can generate an animation, I'll give a bonus on the assignment. And I had 20 apps thrown at me. The first one was actually a GIF creator, so they exist as well. But this app, the dynamic of this app is huge. It works kind of like a flip book, if you could remember what that was like, where you do a drawing, and if you turn to the next page, you can kind of mimic the first drawing or make things move. And this first example is a math example, so I'm going to let Melissa take over.
So this is basic vocab, but it's delivered in a really cute way. This is, can, again, be done in any kind of domain and any level. They just created an animation using vocabulary words. You can see that was a really cute way for the kids to deliver. And again, that's an easy, that would have been normally like a hard copy of a Valentine that they would have turned in. So this is a great way to get them from that, paper to this digital environment where they can go a little bit further and be a little bit more creative.
The next example is an example of a lesson that I generated basically from the text, which I wanted to introduce the unit so that my kids have a better understanding of when I get up there and talk to them about evolution. So generally it's give me examples of evolution and types of evolution, and the students would go to their textbook and get the examples straight from the text. So I got basically the same answers from each student. When I thought of this lesson, I said, I want you to search these types of evolutions and examples of evolution, and I want you to interpret them into your own visuals and interpretations of what these words mean to you. So I'm going to let the video play, and then I'll talk about it a little bit after.
I bet that we could light up the sky. The big, big bang, the reason I'm alive. When all the stars collide in this universe inside. The big, big bang. The big, big bang. The big, big bang. Give me the take it from me, I don't wanna be mummified. Sometimes I feel so isolated, I wanna die. And I'll take it from you if you got it. Every time, so baby, bring your body here next to mine.
So as you see, my students took the information they collected online, they generated their own examples and interpretation, they did their own drawings, and then they actually explained it to me live in class. So just an assignment that used to be 4 simple questions from their text turned into this explosion of information. And the joy as a teacher to get to grade things like this, all my students have their own individual interpretation of this information. It's amazing to watch them evolve and become independent learners and create their own things.
All right, Telegami is a really fun app, especially for someone like myself that I don't like to hear my voice, or students that might not want that, or they just might want to be creative and use an animated character. It helps them put those presentations together. They can type in words and the program will read the words out to them. They do have to sometimes fix things phonetically so that the sound works, so that's a great tool when trying to learn phonics. And here's a little example. And what was funny with this app is it's so easy to use. We actually learned it when we were away at a conference, and I created one to send to my students from California all the way to sunny Fort Lauderdale to remind them about a huge project we had due. And when I came back, a lot of them used that app as part of their project to display information. So it's great to see how the kids just latch onto these things without training, without doing anything. They just figure it out.
My example, I remember the actual moment when I was in a lesson, and no offense at all to Darwin.
I'm Charles Darwin.
But
I was born on February 12, 1809 in Shrewsbury, England, in the house behind me. I proposed a theory of evolution which changed the way we thought about life to sail aboard the HMS Beagle for 5 years.
What I called I Am Darwin, and I had the students explain to me every point I needed to make from the video in their own interpretation. And I actually learned a couple of things about Darwin from my students.
I'm Charles Darwin. I was born on February 12, 1809 in Shrewsbury, England, in the house behind me. I proposed a theory of evolution which changed the way we thought about life to sail aboard the HMS Beagle for 5 years.
So my students went online, they actually looked up information about Darwin, and I just used the same questions that the video was going to express, and I asked them to use their own discovery to find the answers.
So the next app we're going to highlight is iMovie, and iMovie is kind of like our wrap it all up and make sure everything is fine-tuned app. It can be basic, used for images and audio, but I would say that most of our kids finish stuff within iMovie. So in a minute, I'm going to show you an example of a project that actually started in Doceri. So I had the students give me an animation of a word problem, and these were mixture problems, and goodness knows anybody that's ever taught math knows that students' favorite part is not the word problem. And so I said, let's let them be a little bit more creative. So these kids created an animation of the word problem and then worked on solving it. And you see the student created this in Doceri, but what happened was he didn't like his audio. So at the end, he pulled it into iMovie, he removed his audio from it, and then re-recorded the audio. So they use iMovie a lot for editing purposes.
Costing $2 per kilogram and the dry costing $4 per kilogram. Or you can get both for $3 a kilogram. So the store has 50 kilograms of fresh fruit that sells for 2 kilograms. In order to sell the mixture for $3 a kilogram, how many kilograms of dried fruit should be used?
So you can see that once he's done with the actual word problem, he does his chart, he works out the problem, and he gets to the answer. And I will say that I watch these grades really carefully with word problems because sometimes I'm a skeptic myself. And I definitely saw an improvement in the grades based on what they did with this assignment.
Well, again, our kids use iMovie for everything, but I found this interesting. This was actually not part of the assignment. My students still work in their classroom as a typical science class. We do labs, and I have them generate lab reports. This is actually an extensive lab that takes over 3 weeks. And I found that in the lab it was really hard always to analyze if what the students claim they see, they're actually seeing. So I started to incorporate the iPad into the lab so that they could show me what they actually see. So you're going to see in this clip that my students use the eyepiece of the iPad to actually screenshot what they were looking at under the microscope and the camera lens with the eyepiece of the microscope and take video. And there is a device that you can attach to the microscope which will do this for you, but I like to challenge my students and they rise to the occasion. So there you're seeing a sample of the lab report and the collection of data. And they type up their lab report, but they screenshot each picture and put it into iMovie so that they could show me.
Ew, look at that! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh my gosh, what happened to the light?
We got it!
All right, this project, iMovie, one of the projects that they're doing in my class, this is what I'm actually giving right now. This was from last year. This is a poetry project. I got the idea from What's Your Verse commercial from Apple where they had a Walt Whitman poem being read, and it was asking what's your verse from his poem, and it was contemporary images of the impact life is having in our society today. So what I had the students do is take some old Victorian poetry and recite the old words and use contemporary images that show the meaning behind it, and came up with some great things.
The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you shoulder high. Today, the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsman of a stiller town.
You know how I got these scars?
Smart lad, to slip be times away, from fields where glory does not stay. And early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose.
We're going to show you an app called ThingLink next. And ThingLink is like a virtual poster board. So you can import links or, links to websites, links to other video files, links to documents.
You can upload photos. This was a romantic poetry project. I teach British literature, so there's lots of poetry. And they took pic collage and created the backdrop for this with the 6 objectives that I asked them to basically reteach or explain or draw conclusions to this information, and in 6 different modalities. So one of the ways they used, as you can see, the little telegami. They've got a Prezi going on. They did an EduCreations link. They uploaded an MLA PDF. And they did all these different tasks to show that they could prove mastery of different objectives that I had given them throughout that unit. And so they compiled all of their work, so it's kind of like a portfolio of everything we did for that unit. And when you run over it, you'll see in the next slide how it pictures, and you can see everything.
This is an example of a project that I used to give my students where they actually teach the lesson in class. And again, they used Pic Collage to start the project. The beauty of this one was I didn't tell them what platform they needed to use the project for. They actually were able to choose any platform of their choice, and this particular group finalized their project on ThingLink. They presented live, so there's no audio in this project. They just basically go through every point of the project, the intro to the virus or bacteria, showing me the types. I'm kind of running through there and showing you what the ThingLink looks like when you click on the links. And my students actually created an animation to show how you test, which is one of the prerequisites of the project. And while they show you the animation in class, they actually walk you through what they're describing in a live presentation. So it's used for multifunctioning, and when you give kids the opportunity or you expose them to specific apps, and then you allow them to choose what they feel is probably the best choice for them, you start to see where their learning increases because they're choosing something that's working for them that helps them master the content.
So we're going to kind of wrap up this last one that we use. It's called Book Creator, and Book Creator has probably endless amount of possibilities that it can be used for. But what we push our students to use it for is two major ways. One is collaboration of images and videos that the students can create, and a lot of us have created like review books through this. But we also use it and push our students to use it for archiving. So Book Creator is a great way to take projects that they've done or even hard copy projects or artwork that they could take a picture of and pair it with video or audio and compile it into a book that can be used, opened in iBooks. It can be saved as a PDF, and it even can be saved as a video. So you can make basically a slideshow from what you're creating. So what I'm going to show you is a mix of instructor-generated book and student-generated. What I basically did was I took screenshots of the notes that I would have done with my students, and then I asked them to create videos, and I combined the videos in there with them.
Find the period of a tangent curve. You do pi over b. And in this case, to find your asymptotes, you must use bx minus c equals negative pi over 2, and bx minus c equals pi over 2. To find the period of a tangent curve, you do pi over b. And in this case, your period is pi. These 4 points become your 4 asymptotes. Now, find the point in the middle, and with those 3 points.
So now you can see basically they continue to work out the examples. So this book is full of all different examples of all different kinds of graphing, and I just basically compiled it into one book so the students have this for review.
Okay, the way I've used it in my class is I had them in Macbeth. Let me flip that. I had my students basically create, I guess, a Macbeth for Dummies. One of them actually titled that. You can see on the bottom of the screen there, where they taught their act. So I had them all break into groups, and they had to own it and be an expert on their act. I gave them a list, an outline of all the different objectives they had to meet. They had to summarize. They had to foreshadow, characterization. I'm going to go ahead and play this, and you can kind of get a little quick example of what that would look like as a book.
In Act 1, Scene 2, we're introduced to King Duncan, who is the good king of Scotland. He's also the model of a virtuous ruler. We are also introduced to his two sons, Malcolm and Donalbain. They're also accompanied by Lennox, who is a Scottish nobleman. And the four men wait at a military camp for a captain to
If Macbeth does kill Duncan, other people will probably be angry and sad because he is a good
Right, so
king.
you can see a little bit how there's little mini lessons there. There's things that they've screenshot, and put it into the book. They've put images, they've put mood, tone, they've spoken. So it really compiled a well thought out product, and all of the students were able to read each other's books as we would go over the actual play. So great learning tool and a great review once they got to keep for midterms.
The kids are actually using this app to basically generate their own information and archiving. So like she said, for midterms, some of them are compiling all their information like in Melissa's book just for their own reference, not because the teacher assigned it.
Yeah, they love the tool.
So what we've done, how you can access all the information that we just basically showed you and more, is we've created a Canvas course called Transforming Your Classroom, and there's the enroll code. And if you go through the modules in there, you'll basically see that we gave you some ideas of what the assignment maybe used to look like, or we gave instructions to how the assignment was given out. And then there's also the student examples there so that you can see that all.
And there's a link to the apps that we covered, along with some of them include even tutorials on how to use the apps.
Well, thank you, Melissa, Monica, and Irene, for sharing some of the apps you're using at Archbishop McCarthy High School. We have only about 7 minutes left, so we're no way are we going to be able to get to all the questions that have been asked. There have been an awful lot of questions asked. So if you did ask a question and we don't get to it, someone from Instructure or from Archbishop McCarthy will get in touch with you and maybe give you some answers to that. But in the meantime, let's see if we can run through some quick questions.
Yeah, I was
Melissa,
looking
Monica,
there.
Irene. Sorry?
Well, I was going to start answering them. I wanted to wait for some of them because there's so much to say with them, and it would be faster and I think better if everyone would hear the answers. A big one is, what role does Canvas play in McCarthy's successful implementation? Over the first, and it'll answer, I think, another question or two that's been there. One of the first things is we had used Shobi and Dropbox and Google Drive, and we were using Schoology, and we were using all these different Edline, all these different learning management systems and apps to try to survive that digital era of not getting a million emails when students were turning in work. And when we had the full rollout this year, what it did to help our school be so successful is we have 100% of our teachers utilizing the technology. There's a place for the kids to put things, give them, get them. It's like having that classroom system and in the digital world. Without Canvas's implementation, there would still be so many spatterings of who's doing this, who's doing that, and what's easier to learn. Canvas was easy for our lowest level teachers, and our high level teachers are taking it and rock starring it around. I hope I answered that question. How concerned are you with students using photos? Yes, sir?
No, I mean, were there other questions that you had seen that have come across through the Q&A console that you would really like to address right now, rather than me picking them? Is there another one that really you wanted to address?
There's another one here about data to support It says here, do any of you have data to support the claim that they are understanding more and performing better? One of the things I'd like to do, I mean, as far as data, we do have our standardized testing, our SAT national merits have increased. However, even within our own school, we all have to give standardized tests, the Scantron type of assessments, the same across the board. So my 3 other colleagues that teach English 4 have to give that same test on unit test on Beowulf or on anything that we teach. And I have found that when I'm having them build projects and creating things where they have to be the teachers and own their learning and I'm not the stage on the stage, that their test scores have rocketed in comparison to the teachers who have not quite mastered changing their techniques of teaching. Because we do give the same test, and I mean, my scores are not a bell curve because no one is failing. Everyone is managing to do very, very well.
And we are monitoring our AP scores as well. I think with the use of this technology, students don't just master the lesson on point, they retain information. And it's evident in our AP scores, all teachers are basically above the national average, anywhere between 20 and 35%.
There's another question here about apps being purchased by the school. Now the new iPads come with the iWorks, but we do have a few apps that the school pushes out and purchase for the school, namely like Notability. That's our paper and pen. So any app that we've vetted and we've decided that for the entire school, the school will purchase it. Most of the other apps are really free, and when they're not, here's my little sidebar. My syllabus used to have about $40 worth of paper, pen, pencils that need to be purchased and repurchased year after year, semester after semester. And that's on top of that for 7 other teachers or 6 other teachers, depends how your school works. I spent $200 every summer buying school supplies for my daughters. As a technological digital school, they buy that app once. They spend your $3, $10 if it's a big one. Inspiration Maps is a big one, but a great one. And they get to use that for the life of their education. So exponentially, they're saving money, although they have to buy these tools for the classroom, just like you need them to buy a pair of scissors or paper. So that's kind of how we do that as well.
Did you have any questions you wanted to ask us in terms of what you've been seeing on your end?
Yeah, well, there has been, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but there were some questions about, with all this work, these fantastic apps that you were displaying, how students who are working within these apps are submitting their work, and once it's submitted, where it's being stored, and so on. You touched on this a little bit before, but could you maybe lay out in a little more detail how students actually end up submitting their work to you and the process that it goes through?
So with the exception of tests and some quizzes were pretty much entirely digital, these students are basically submitting the work through Canvas. I mean, that was our answer to all of the problems with students being able to turn in work. Videos, it doesn't matter how big they are. Presentations, it doesn't matter where they started, if they were in Pages or if they were in Prezi, they are able to open all of those things into Canvas and submit them that way. So it makes the turn-in process really seamless. And then we use, basically we grade from the SpeedGrader app, which allows us to view all of those things without having to open in all of those apps. So we can watch a movie with a rubric right there and go ahead and grade it. It makes it so much easier.
And it's also stored there the entire life of the course. All of your students' projects and work are stored there. And if you had any of them that you specially wanted to download into your own personal iPad or your own personal, you could keep it. I believe the students also have a portfolio feature where they can archive all of the work that they want to keep and that they're proud of. And we've had absolutely no storage issues. It's been incredible. The kids have it all in one place, and so do the teachers, because once all of our digital content has been uploaded and stored in our Canvas classes, we get to share them. So just like I told you, there's 3 other teachers teaching my prep. Well, we're all putting them in to one master course, and now I have access to all of their work, and they have access to mine, and we get to share, collaborate, and become master teachers in a master school.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you so much. We are rapidly running out of time, so we won't take any more questions. As I said, if we didn't get to your questions, someone will follow up with you to get you some answers. And also, that code that was shown during the presentation, we will put that code for the Canvas course that includes a list of all the apps that were used and displayed today. We'll put that in the email that you'll be receiving from us in a day or so. And that will also include a link to the full recording of the webinar and the presentation. So as we wrap up, I just want to thank Melissa, Chris Weiser, Monica Arango, and Irene Rodriguez for a truly excellent presentation, some really amazing apps and how they're using them in the classroom. And I would also like to thank Instructure for its support. That is it. Thank you all very much for attending, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.